Can you hear me now on LinkedIn? I think you can, but I'm going to keep riffing and you can tell me in the comments, either Jackie or Rebecca. Mwah, I appreciate you. Thank you for that. Let me know. I think we've had a little bit of a mic disconnect there. You can hear me all on Instagram though, because I can see what you're saying. Yeah, Jane is relating to this. Teen angst, yes. So there would be a particularly hairy problem and you would share it around at the bus stop while you were waiting to go to school. Or sometimes they would come out at like sleepovers and you kind of pass them around and all like giggle about what was going on. Oh, fantastic, Philip. Thank you. The audio just came in. Goodness gracious me. Technical hitches never cease, do they? So for those of you who are joining me on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn, I do apologize for the sound issue there. I was just reintroducing the concept of this mini series. So the idea is we're embracing the nostalgic power of 90s. And if you're a woman similar age to me, I'm now 41. So if you're around about that age, you will probably know in the UK. I'm really interested actually, if you're out in the US, did you have problem pages in teen magazines when you were young? And were they full of lots of details about the human body and relationships and everything? That's what we're kind of doing with the concept of this. It is to promote my branding program, which is aimed at female experts. And if you've just joined me here in the landscape and the audio has come back on, what we were talking about before was my endless love of the power of nostalgia. It's a very important thing in advertising. A great example of this off of the top of my head, because I've just said Britpop, is Halifax Bank. Halifax use a lot of Britpop songs when they're selling mortgages right now. And that's to make people of my generation and age feel like buying a house and being a sensible old crusty adult is actually the same feeling as what we felt when we had that zest of life and joie de vivre when we knew about Oasis the first time around. There's a very important psychological connection that very clever minds in advertising agencies have thought about, have studied, and are proving. That's why Halifax picks those types of songs. I don't think they're going to change from that. That's a little prediction. I don't have any insider secrets. Maybe if you know someone at Halifax. But I know brands do this, and brands have done this over and over and over again. And it's the way that that brand principle is applied. So there's a connection there between nostalgia and brand strategy. Let's get into tonight's problems and the theme of the evening. So, the category for tonight is something that I see a lot of female experts wrestle with and tussle with. And it's something I've experienced as well. I'm going to share something from my career so you get to know me a little bit more. We've had some really interesting things come in. And it's all about that awful feeling when you're having a particularly crappy week or a crappy couple of weeks in your business and you're, why am I even doing this? Like, why did I set this business up? What on earth was I thinking? This is a joke. Like, nothing's going my way. What's the point? Or you start to feel a little bit resentful about the other sacrifices that you've made. Maybe you've taken time away from your family and you've got young children, or maybe you've just taken time away from your personal relationships and you start to feel a little bit resentful about that. And you then start questioning, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Maybe I had a better deal when I was just working a 9 to 5 and I could close the office door at, 4:58 and that was it. I can go home and be with my family. There's an element there of the grass is always greener. But I think there's that, why the F am I doing this? I think that's something that a lot of people watching this will relate. You need to let me know in the comments if that's something that resonates for you. If you feel a little bit too scared and embarrassed to do that, you can tell me in the DMs later, and I promise I won't tell anyone. So yeah, there's that idea of feeling frustrated and resentful about the sacrifices, maybe feeling a little bit listless. I see a lot of women that I speak to, whether they're in the program or not, just in my community, feel a little bit like blur. There's all these other things going on in the world, and I'm just doing this with my business. Blur, like, what's the point? Or the other thing is struggling to make decisions. And we talked a little bit in last week's live, which you can catch on my website in the replays. I'll put a link to that later on. We talked about that decision by jury and how sometimes that is a very powerful sign that you've got some foundational branding problems going on. Having a solid brand strategy should mean that making decisions is not fully streamlined and immediate, but a hell of a lot less. It's a lot more frictionless, less friction in that decision making process. So if you know that you're feeling a little listless and a bit blur, and you're not really in love with your business as much anymore because it's been a few years and things are hard, and now you're also struggling to make tiny little decisions about, maybe it's to do with marketing activity or promotional activity. Maybe it's to do with operational upgrades, staffing issues, some of the things that we've talked about in previous weeks. That could be a sign that you're having one of these like existential moments with your business. And that means that you have a problem with the core and the value part of your brand. Hi, Makers United. Hi, Frank. Hi, Holly. Oh, it's lovely to see you. Junior, um, the Palka, and oh my goodness, we've got some fantastic people here this evening. The first problem has been submitted by a new contact of mine, Ellen. Now, Ellen has a business called Ministry VA Services. So she does different virtual assistant services. And it's all focused on helping clients do more of what they're good at. And I have this here. This just came in before we went live. So I have it here on my screen. But what I'll do to give a little nod to the big breakfast is I'll still hold up one of these cards whilst I'm reading it, because we've done that every week. It feels like I'd be breaking a tradition. And yes, I am a bit superstitious. Okay, so here we go. Here's the first thing from Ellen. So she says, something a lot of my clients say to me before they start with working with a virtual assistant is, why on earth, or she says, why the F am I doing this, when people out there are earning more money doing a simple job that they put down when they walk out of the door? So just what I was saying there about this idea of being 4:58, right? Peace, I'm out, see you later. She says, I always ask them to think back when they worked the 9 to 5. How often did they put that job down? How often did they only work their contracted hours? And this is something that's a big part of our culture now, that expectation that you should be working outside of your contracted hours. How annoyed did they get when they missed a girls' trip because they had no holidays left? How pissed off were they when they couldn't use all of the skills that they had because it just wasn't part of their job description, and they worked in an environment, and I'm imagining a culture where doing a little bit extra or being encouraged to grow was not part of the deal? 100% of clients or leads I've had this discussion with really do remember that pain they felt. When we look at the why, everything they wanted from the business, and most of the time they already have some of it, but things like lunches, dog walks, and being out on the school run now started to feel so normal they forgot a time that they totally craved those things. Yes, so there's that element of that initial feeling of entrepreneurial freedom, isn't there, Ellen, in what you're saying, where you're like, yeah, I can pick my hours, and you get to the point where that novelty almost wears off a little bit, or maybe the time has crept over, and those things are no longer as reliable in your daily schedule. So she's talking about basically looking at the why behind setting up the business in the first place. But because of Ellen's incredible skill set and what she does, she's talking about the why with a specific focus on scheduling, on making sure that the person running the business is doing the things that matter most. That's what it says in Ellen's bio. You should follow her, by the way, Ministry VA Services, and I'll put a link to all of her different socials after the show. I love what you're saying there, Ellen. And it's lovely because this is a wonderful opportunity for me to explain the differences about the idea of why. So, the famous thing in my world, and I'm sure everybody on this live or on the replay is familiar with the Simon Sinek, starting with why. And that is more around core values and brand strategy. However, when it gets to the point when you're working in an operational way with somebody who is skilled like Ellen, and she's talking about, yeah, just remember about why you started this. I think there's a beautiful connection there, the strategic side and then the operational thing. We've got Ellen here. Thank you for joining us, Ellen, on Instagram. And she said, everyone thinks the why has to be this massive thing, but the why can just be living a daily life they choose. The why isn't always massive. Yes, I love this, Ellen. However, what I'm talking about tonight is this core principle driver behind the why. It's like the bit that comes behind the why. What you're saying there is the why is a daily life with um an easier schedule. You know, the things that you hold dear, like walking your dog or being with the kids or going on the girls' holiday. You have the flexibility and the freedom to pursue that. I think with brand and strategy, it's taken it a little bit bigger. So I've talked a lot about this feminist issue of women being expected to do all of the things we've talked about, run a house, mother's load, all of those things. Me and Ellen were talking about this over wine on Monday evening. But then there's this extra element of building a legacy. And I think when you're a woman of our time and you've made these sacrifices and you're skilled and you want to build a business that lasts, to give you the financial freedom to have a bit more control over your day to day schedule, you start looking for something a little bit bigger and you start thinking, right, well, what am I doing this for beyond me? I mean, the obvious thing, a lot of women I work with want to build a business to then either be able to sell it to give their children a nice chunk of change or the opportunity to invest in property, that sort of thing, when the time is right. Or sometimes people want to build a business and a brand that has a legacy piece where they can give their children the option to take the business on. That's not always appropriate, though. So, how else do we leave a legacy? What other marks do we want to leave behind us? What are the things that we want people to say at our funeral, um, talking about what it is that we did after we're dead and gone? You know, it's thinking about the impact that we've had. So, this is something that is a key part of the second phase of the brand program that we work on. Last week, we talked a lot about phase one and kind of getting the facts, getting the truth, and comparing that to your perception of what is real and what is actually real. The second phase of the program is when we start saying, right, let's just get our arms around all of these facts and figures, and let's just start thinking about what we want to do with this. Is it that all of the stakeholders that we've interviewed see that we want to have this impact and they don't understand why we're not making that more of the business? Is it that the people that we've spoken to, and after we've looked at all of the competition out there, that everyone, like an obvious one would be again, top of my head. So let's imagine you're a dentist and you're working with like dental aesthetics. So you're dealing with people who want not just a healthy smile, but a beautiful smile. That's your business. Now, I can guarantee you, I haven't done this in a while, I haven't worked with a dentist for a while, but if you were to look at the competitive landscape of the world of dental, if there is a charity that is affiliated, I'm willing to bet a lot of those dentistry practices will have affiliated themselves with charities like Smile or with charities about giving like homeless people dental treatment. They've made a very A to B connection between I'm a dentist who works for people who've got disposable income to have not just a healthy smile, a beautiful smile. How can I give back? So this is now going to be my legacy. What am I going to do? Obvious choice, pick a dental charity. Tick, job done. Now that's all well and good, and that is a beautiful way to give back to the community through the value of teeth. But when you look at a competitive landscape and every single person in that sphere, that world is doing the exact same thing, you can start to see how now that's not really going to be leaving impact with your legacy because you aren't standing out. You're just part of this flock of sheep all doing the exact same thing. It's like greenwashing, like teeth washing. It's like, yeah, check, we're giving something back to charity, move on. That completely negates the whole reason of having a value or being very intentional about the legacy that you're trying to build. So that's something that we explore in the second phase. Next, I'm going to share a little bit about my career. So if you don't know me, you might find this valuable. If you do know me, maybe you don't know this about me, but I'm going to dig in. So I've had an interesting career in the world of photography. I've worked in the industry now for getting on for about 15 years. Um, and when I first decided to niche down my business, I decided I wanted to be the best brand photographer in the world. And I wanted to work with the most successful, interesting people in the world. And those were the people whose faces and images I wanted to capture. And the idea for me around legacy was I'm capturing our time, right? I'm documenting our time. These people are amazing. They're making significant changes to history within their world. I'm the one who captured that. Like, I'm a big fan of Time and Life magazine. I'm sure you're aware of it. I wanted to create photos that were on par with that level, things that people will look back on after I'm dead and gone, and that would mark that point in history. And wasn't it great that Laura Pearman was there? She captured that. What a wonderful creative person she was. That was my idea around legacy. It was very surface, well, not really surface level, but I kind of, brushed over it and moved on. I didn't really focus on it. I didn't back it up much with facts. So then on, I rocked and I went on to take my brand photography business to a higher end of the marketplace. And then I decided to take it international. And I noticed that a lot of people who were prepared to pay the money that I wanted to charge were very successful, right? So they were of influence, or they were making a significant share of their income through influence, like affiliates. They were probably very schooled at professional speaking, and they were being paid to book. They were being paid to show up to do talks at different conferences around the world. And they probably had large followings. So I was like, yep, those are my people. They've got the money that I want to be paid, and they need the photos, right? They need it for what they're doing to keep their businesses going. I totally I did not expect to have some of the experiences that I did when I did that. So on more than one occasion, I'm not going to say that it's every time because it wasn't. I've met some incredible people in that space who I hold to be dear friends now, people who I always have time for. But on more than one occasion, I will say that I left from photo shoots feeling a little bit dirty, a little bit icky and grimy. And that was because I've been subjected to having to navigate massive egos. Now, at first, I'm quite a people person. I'm happy to pander to someone. And when you're a photographer, you're trained to do whatever you need to do to get the shot. And if that means tolerating someone talking to you like you're a maid for a couple hours, you just suck it up and you do it. But these experiences really left me feeling hurt to the point where I started to question, why have I chosen to do this in my life? Why, it was one of those, what the F am I doing moments in my business. I didn't sign up for this. I don't deserve to be treated like that. I'm a highly skilled professional person. I can deliver a great service. So why are they making me feel like, you know, a terrible junior member of their entourage who needs to be spoken to in a disrespectful way? Now that's got me thinking. I've had it's been a long period of time of soul searching. We're going to get onto that with one of our submissions that we've got next. But I started thinking, right, I like the idea of it, but maybe there's something more. Yeah, it was pretty gross, Jane, and it's felt a little bit scary to share that. Now, I thought back to my earlier years in life, when I was in my 20s, one of my best friends and I had dreamt up this idea of creating a feminist magazine. And it was going to be all about upholding and giving a spotlight to fantastic female creatives at the time. And the magazine was going to be called Uber Wench. And I was going to do all these wonderful, like shocking feminist art photo shoots for it. And we were going to be like the dazed and confused, but of the angry feminist variety. And me and her still pontificate about this now to this day, many years later. And I started thinking about that. And I was like, yeah, I'm angry here. Like, are you treating me like this because I'm a woman? Is this a feminist issue? Should I get my feminist anger all, fired up in my belly about this? And then I started thinking, hang on a minute, no, maybe there's just more to this. So I've done more and more education. I've read more and more feminist texts. I've gone out there and learned more about the feminist movement and all of the different iterations that we've had in the timeline of feminism, post-feminism, all of those different iterations. And I started to get so inspired by that I decided I wanted that to be part of my legacy. So now this is why I have a branding program that is specifically designed for expert women who have built a brand in their own way over the last few years. And now they want to refine it to build a life on their terms, because unfortunately, the way that the system is constructed, it's highly likely that women go through life compromising their terms. And if you've done all of the hard work and you've achieved all of the things that need to happen to build a successful business, then by damn it, you deserve to have a brand that works for you to help you live a life more on your terms. And it's that legacy that you can show to the next generation of our younger women and professionals and experts coming up, that this is possible. And we've made that path a little bit less a bit easier to walk across. So that's my story around finding my value and exploring it. And it also shows that I've had that experience and I've understood and learned from it. And that's what I think we're doing all of the time. We're having these experiences with clients, and sometimes they're a little bit out of alignment, or sometimes the hellish experience. And it makes us think, what the hell am I doing this for? Why have I set up my business? That's the whole theme of tonight. We've had some great comments in. Jackie saying, oh, the stories. Yes, I'm sure you could craft all of what I've said into lots of different stories, Jackie. And we should probably talk about that at some point. And then we have my fantastic friend Jane. She said, yeah, I like your legacy life on her terms in a feminist way. Wowza. Oh, that's good. I'm glad that it's resonating with some of you. I think the next thing to talk about in the second phase of the branding program is there's an element around coming up with different statements. So it's boiling down all of the facts and the things that we've learned in phase one, which you can learn about if you go back and replay the last few episodes of this mini series. But it's about crystallizing that into very clear statements that you have in a brand guidelines document. And those statements are usable in so many different ways. I actually have an episode of Moi TV where I'm choking on spaghetti as a metaphor for choking on different marketing and promotional statements, and how people call the same thing by many different names. So if you are familiar with a vision statement or a personal branding statement or a mission statement, and you're not really sure what the hell they're about or why you might even need them, then that episode will help you out. So I'll put a link to that later when we've signed off. Hey Ian, it's good to see you. I hope you're well. Let's go into the next one. So the next one is from Sarah Seed. Now, I've known Sarah for a good few years now. I love Sarah's energy. She has the best Instagram. Like it's like a Zen feed. So if you need a bit of female-centric Zen in your life, I recommend checking out Sarah Seed. I'll put links to her in all of the show notes after we've wrapped. But Sarah works in even more of a deeper way than on this aspect than what I do and what Ellen does. It takes it back a step. So I like the way that we're taking it in a linear direction. She's gone even deeper into the soul. Sarah has had a very interesting life. She's been on a very interesting journey in her life. You need to check her out and understand all of the crazy things that have happened to her and how she's navigated those to lead a life that is completely on her terms. And she has never sacrificed that. She's got more and more determined to build that life intentionally, to the point where she now exclusively works with women who feel lost or stuck or disconnected with their sense of self in a holistic life way. So maybe you're disconnected from your relationship. So you need to go to Sarah to speak to that. I can help you when it comes to your brand, but when it comes to relationship stuff, I would be telling you need to speak to Sarah. Sarah has a fantastic workshop coming up on Wednesday, the 21st of June. And it's an online workshop, so you can join her from anywhere in the world. I'm sure she'll be providing a replay service for people who are on different time zones and can't make it live. And she's going to help you. So if you relate to that idea of just feeling it's not just that you're disconnected and you're having a bit of a crappy work week and you're not really sure why you set up your business, maybe the existential crisis has gone a little bit deeper. Maybe you've had a milestone birthday and you're starting to think, yeah, this isn't where I thought I'd be at this age. I don't even know who I am. Never mind getting into my business. You need to see Sarah first. And once you and Sarah have worked together and you started pulling that clarity out from your heart and your soul, then it's time to come to me and work with the On Her Terms brand program. Let me see if I can find the next one. Okay. So our next comment, it's a question actually, is from Jackie at Brick House. Oh, you're interested to know about mission statement. I will put a link. I go into the full details. Hey, Stacey. Stacey's my hairdresser. What do we think? I think she did good. Yeah, I'll tell you about the mission statement because it's very important you understand the iterations, Jane, between how they fit together. So I will give you the link to the episode where it's way more concise and clear, and I'll do that after we've wrapped. Let's get into Jackie's question. So Jackie is a copywriter, and she specializes in the art of telling stories. She said before in the LinkedIn comments there, oh, the stories. So that was a beautiful tie-in. Now, Jackie is a story smith. I think that's the best way that I would describe her if we were here and I was introducing you to her. She says that she has no problem with people connecting me with my business and what I do, but she's talking more about the idea of personal brand and how we craft our stories around building a personal brand. Now, having a personal brand is one of the types of architecture structures of a brand. You can have different types of brand, but when you're thinking about legacy, this idea of being known for something, you maybe like for instance, maybe you're in an organization and you have no intentions of leaving that organization, but you want to start being intentional about your legacy and you want to involve maybe some charitable work or something that you're doing outside of that job, but you want to tie it together. This is a great structure to have when you're thinking about having a personal brand. You can have a personal brand business as well. I won't go too much into the detail on that. But Jackie's question is, where does what you do, Laura, from a brand strategy point of view, fit with what I do when it comes to crafting stories? How do we get the focus on the right type of values when we're thinking about beginning to tell these stories? So this is actually a great example. Jackie and I know this, but it's a great question asked because I don't think people would see the difference. You can tell me now in the comments if you're unsure about a storyteller and a brand person working with values and legacy. It can feel a little tenuous, right, when you're not in the business and you don't know. So when it comes to what I do, we're talking about the ultimate North Star. So we can use my business as an example. I want to be known as being the woman who helped raise other women up to be recognized and respected experts in their field. And then beyond that, I want to make it easier for the younger generations of women to follow that path and that more trodden path to make it easier for them to be more successful, because I'm a feminist and I think we should have equality. That's my ultimate North Star, right? But when it comes to my personal brand, I have different themes of my personality. I have lots of stories, like every single person does, but it's all about crafting the right stories. So Jackie's question is saying, where does what you do fit with what I do? Now, Jackie would talk to you about all of the different stories of your career. Maybe it's all of the stories of your life. But the idea is that all of those stories are pre-informed and underpinned with the ultimate value of your brand. So a story about me I'm trying to think. I don't know what a story about me being afraid of dogs as a child and having to have hypnotherapy for it is it doesn't really fit with this feminist narrative. However, when you're working with someone like Jackie, we can use that anecdote from my life and feed it back into this journey of self-discovery, this journey of overcoming fear, and how that feels to be a woman business leader of our time. I hope I've done an all right example there, Jackie. You can give me marks out of 10 there. So you see how the story is the story, and the story can be crafted to go into a call to action, like, so you should follow me on Instagram, or you should buy my thing, whatever it is. But it is all underpinned with what I do at the root, which is about the strategy and the vision and the quest. So they tie together. Now, another example of this, which is probably a little bit more practical and you can visualize it more, is the output that we have from the branding program is a very robust and detailed brand guidelines document. And in that document, we will overview all of the information that we've gathered from the first phase of the program. Then we solidify it all into these powerful statements. And then we show future creative suppliers what they need to do to uphold those things when they're doing their work. So when you're getting into story brand and brand story, like you say, Jane, you would be able to give somebody like Jackie your brand guidelines document. She's then going to do a whole different piece of work with you about the stories and anecdotes of your life. But Jackie knows now, how do we craft that using the right type of copy in the right type of tone to underpin the brand. The work that Jackie does is then an addendum on the brand guidelines document. So you might come to me, do the brand strategy, we finish with a brand guidelines document. You then go to Jackie. No, hang on. Let's just wind this back. You go and see Sarah first. You figure out what's going on with your life. Who are you as a person? What matters in your heart? Then you come to me and do the brand strategy and we work out your brand guidelines document. Then you might work with somebody like Jackie, who's in the creative space. She could come up with a whole document that is a synopsis of your storytelling method, the anecdotes, the key anecdotes, and how they tie back. Then you might go and see somebody like Ellen to say, look, Ellen, I want to have a less crazy life. I'm trying to do this. Why am I, I can't seem to uphold this. Ellen's going to get a good feeling in a logical, operational way of what you're trying to build. So now she can start recommending, how do we introduce processes? Maybe when we're thinking about hiring team members, we do it in this way. So you see how this is actually all part of the same structure to make your business better, to make it more on your terms. Jackie agrees with me. Thank goodness for that. I didn't want you to have to tell me off and go, no, Laura, that kind of wasn't the point. So I'll give you some examples. I talk about this sometimes on the show around personal branding themes. So my different themes, one of them is cocktails. And yes, I do like to drink a cocktail, but it's like a creative quest for me. So a lot of the way that I create is by mixing opposites and shoving them together. And I also like the frivolity of what it is to have a cocktail. You think of Del Boy on Only Fools and Horses, which, if you're in the States, is a very silly British comedy show. Where this guy is like a real man, but he has an over the top cocktail every time he goes down the pub. It's that silly frivolity, over the top, extra, umbrella, wedge of pineapple, sparklers, the whole thing. That's how I like to live my life. A cocktail is a good representation of what I aspire to be. And it's this idea of mixology, and there's the aesthetic of it that I like. So that's one of my personal brand themes. Another one is Suki the cat. Now, I don't have children. I consider myself to be a fur. I have a fur baby, but she's also like the worst employee in the world, right? Because she's a cat. She gives no Fs. She doesn't give a damn. So we have that as one of the running stories that go through everything that I create and put out there. One of them is around traveling and exploration of the mind. Another one is to do with my feminist roots that we've talked about a lot. And then the other side of it is my vintage lifestyle as well. So I appreciate things from yesteryear, and it's all about how I look, and it's my approach to doing things like in the trusted, true way. So it's you can see straight away from those 5 themes that the stories just explode out of those themes, but the themes pull it back down to my ultimate quest as a business. So yeah, traveling mind, feminist vintage, wowzer. Yes, that's me, but with a cocktail, Jane. I've just put a QR code on the screen there while I was telling you about that, and that takes you to the application page of the brand program. So if you're feeling interested about this, or maybe just a little bit curious, you can go and check that out on my website. Again, after we've wrapped, I will put links in the show notes for you. What did you think? Have we got any more shares before we sign off here? I want to know if anybody's got any other questions or stories. Jackie's just said here, content strategy feeds into brand strategy. Yes, exactly that. It's about the application. And then she said sisterhood of the traveling pants as well. I love that. Jane over here says, makes sense. That's so great. I'm glad it makes sense. That makes me feel good. And the cocktail, so good. Yes, loving the idea of the program. So that's it for this week. You can tune in next week. We're going to be talking about another specific branding problem. I think next week we're talking about this idea of colors and fonts and how, yes, that's an application of branding strategy, but it doesn't mean you have your whole brand figured out. You can pre-submit any questions to me through the link that I'll provide in the show notes after we've wrapped. If you want to ask me an anonymous question, maybe it's a little bit sensitive and you don't want to affiliate your brand or reputation with it, but you know it's quite spicy, you can tell me that and I will protect your anonymity. If you want to have a little shout out like we've had for Jackie, who I want you to connect with, Jackie does lots of different workshops. We'll be putting a link to her. We've got a link from Sarah and Sarah's different workshops. We're going to have a link for Ellen as well and her fantastic business and what she does to help people get their time back. You can do that too. You can share a story with me. Maybe you have a question. Maybe you have a question from somebody who's in your community and you want to be the conduit to get the question to me. I will answer it on the show, and I'm more than happy to shout about you and give you a little bit of this attention too. I only talk about the people who I value and I can see that they're doing amazing work. There's a part of my brand values again. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Mwah.